Hattie Caraway, one of the intriguing characters and eras of Arkansas political history. Let's go back to the Depression. And for our young people who are watching, perhaps they may not know much about the Depression. But the Depression in Arkansas, affecting a Arkansas rural farming agrarian economy, was devastating. We were on our hands and knees begging for mercy. The unemployment lines were enormous. The food lines were enormous. And Franklin D. Roosevelt was about to become President of the United States. And what would happen? Thaddeus Caraway, United States Senator Caraway, very popular senator from Northeast Arkansas, suddenly died of a heart attack. The governor of Arkansas at that time said, well, we're going to name his widow, Hattie Caraway, to represent Arkansas during that period of time.
And this was not that common in the U.S. Senate. It had been done before in the House of Representatives, where they had 2-year terms. But in the U.S. Senate, you're talking about, could potentially be 5, 6 years. And so it wasn't done that often. The governor decided that Hattie would be a good choice. And I think, frankly, thought she'd sort of be a placekeeper. She could hold the seat for a while.
And she would sit there, keep the seat warm, and vote according to what Joe T. Robinson, the Democratic leader of the Senate, wanted her to do, and the powers that be in Arkansas. She was sworn in. She served in the Senate. She sat on the back row of the United States Senate.
During her time in the Senate, Hattie Caraway had become a fairly close friend and loyal lieutenant of Huey Long, the senator from Louisiana, who was one of the most ardent opponents of Franklin Roosevelt.
Huey P. Long had been governor of Louisiana for a number of years. He was known as the Kingfish. He was the most potent, powerful politician in the South because he had a message of populism. He wanted to redistribute the wealth. He wanted to take all the Rockefellers' wealth, divide it up, give them 10%, which was more than most families would ever have in a lifetime, and spread the 90% of their wealth out to the poor people. If you had 10 hogs, he wanted 7 of those hogs to be given to the poor people. Let the farmer keep 3, give the 7 to the poor people. Redistribute the wealth. Populism.
How many men ever went to a barbecue and would let one man take off the table what's intended for 9/10 of the people to eat? The only way you'll ever be able to feed the balance of the people is to make that man come back and bring back some of that grub he ain't got no business with.
Huey had grandiose schemes, and it wasn't long until he was thinking about running for president.
Hattie Caraway was infatuated with Huey P. Long, and she voted for his plan to redistribute the wealth. People couldn't believe it. She went against Joe T. Robinson. She went against the political establishment in Arkansas. And she cast that vote one evening. Huey P. Long, Senator Long by then, went to Hattie's office and said, now, Hattie, you've just cast your vote for me. You've made all of the Arkansas political establishment angry, but you're going to run in your own right for a United States Senator. Oh, Huey, I can't do that. I don't have any money. I have no organization. I'm a poor little widow lady, and I'm just finishing my term. I've loved serving in the Senate. I've enjoyed serving with you. I've angered all the power base. No question, I can't get elected anything. Yes, you can. And Hattie, if you win this race, you will be the first woman in America ever to be elected to a full 6-year term to the United States Senate in her own right.
No one expected the little widow woman, as she was often referred to try to gain a full term in the Senate. And so you had what was seen as an open seat, even though Hattie Caraway was sitting in it. You had a bevy of well-known men who entered the race and who thought their opportunities were great.
You know, lots of folks lined up. The governor himself, Parnell was wanting to run. And then there were other people. There was a former U.S. senator named Kirby. There was a fellow named Bodenheimer who was the president of the American Legion. And the former Governor Brough decided to get in the race.
Hattie Caraway surprised everyone by announcing that she would run for re-election. And then she surprised people even more dramatically when, shortly before the August election, 2 sound trucks roar across the border and come into Magnolia, Arkansas and El Dorado, Arkansas. The Kingfish has arrived in the state.
August 1st, about dawn, Huey Long left with 11 trucks and carloads of troopers and watermelons and fiddle players and fans and water coolers and ice chests and containers coming into Arkansas. They went to Magnolia. They had publicized it with these loud-speaking trucks or loudspeakers, and they had a crowd of 3,000 people at the courthouse. They then moved from there to El Dorado and to Fordyce and to Camden and ultimately in Pine Bluff. They made 31 stops.
Huey effectively used these radio trucks to draw a crowd, but they developed a technique that was different in that they'd work up the crowd in Magnolia, let's say, and get them all enthused about coming out for the speech. And then while the speech is going on, the trucks move on over to Camden or El Dorado or the next town and start working up the crowd over there while Huey and Hattie were back at the first town making their speech.
But after Magnolia, the governor's office had sent a spy down to stand in the crowd, and he went over to the Western Union office across the square in Magnolia. He was to telegraph the governor's office as to what he had seen.
And in it somewhere, he said it was sort of like a circus hitched to a tornado.
And it was Huey P. Long and Hattie Caraway. And Hattie would get up and thank the crowd, and she would speak about 3 minutes. Huey would get up in his white linen suit and take his jacket off and red tie or whatever, suspenders, and he would start haranguing against the money grubbers and the power snatchers. He would speak an hour and a half, 2 hours, it didn't matter. They would make 3 or 4 of these stops each day. And they finally went all over the state. It was becoming the biggest event in Arkansas at that time. They would go out, people from all walks of life. It was a circus. It was entertainment.
As we said, he was successful in getting Hattie Caraway elected. Of course, Huey P. Long did not run for president. He was assassinated in 1935 before the next election. And Hattie Caraway would have a career in the Senate that even her supporters would not describe as notable. Nevertheless, Hattie Caraway did become very skillful in bringing federal project dollars to Arkansas. Work Progress Administration funds during the New Deal, Public Works Administration funds. Federal dollars were used to build buildings in towns and on college campuses throughout the state. And Hattie Caraway was very critical in making sure Arkansas got its share of federal funds during the Great Depression.
So this campaign was an important one, and I think the first impression from some unknown campaign person where he said a circus hitched to a tornado was the best description of that campaign. No one's done better at describing how it impacted all those other politicians and how it took this state by storm.